Hello everyone, 11th standard students. So this is my second part of the first chapter, that is the portrait of a lady. I hope you have written your exam and make sure do the submission of that within the time period. Okay, now let us start. So before I start or before we move further, I just want to give few minutes so that you can recapitulate of what we had studied in the first part of this chapter, that is the portrait of a lady. So I'm just giving you 2 minutes and just try to remember what was there in the chapter. Our author, that is Khushwant Singh, and let me tell you, you have to remember the name of the chapter as well as the name of the author. It is very important. And yes, I can see that there is a reflection of window. You can see it right on the board, but as this is an English lecture or English session, so I won't be doing any sums or anything like that on the board, so I think it won't create any problem. And I just want to let you know that just listen to me carefully. Okay, we are on the verge of completing the chapter. And I want to let you know one important thing. In English as a first language, okay, the subject code of this is 006. Okay, that is the subject code for English as a first language for English medium students for science stream and commerce stream. Okay, 11th science stream and 11th commerce stream. Let me tell you, you would be having 3 books in English. Okay, to one or two of the students I have already talked with them. See, there are now each and every student of English medium, listen to me carefully. Okay, see, you would be having 3 books in English. Okay, 3 textbooks. First is Hornbill, second is Snapshot, and the third one is called Woven Words. Which words? Woven words, that is WOVEN, woven words, WORDS. So you have 3 books. Okay, so let me just tell you. Okay, so these kind of things are very important. So now, without wasting our time, let us continue our chapter. So the last part was our author went to abroad for his further studies. Now let's see what happened. And our granny, that is his granny, had dropped him at the station. Okay, yes, silently she kissed my forehead, and when I left I cherished the moist imprint as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. Yes, that we had studied in the last session. Now let us move further. But that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. Again, after 5 years, he has completed his studies in abroad. They have not mentioned the country or a place. Let's just say that he has completed his studies now after 5 years. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older. She still had no time for words, and while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer, and with frivolous rebuks. So that we have studied. Try to understand. Okay, so as it is written clearly, after 5 years again the granny had came to meet his grandson, and our granny had took him in her arms, as it is clearly mentioned, like they might be hugging each other in that manner. And when they were hugging, our author Khushwant Singh listened to the prayers that she was reciting. Okay, so it's like she was reciting prayers 24/7. Okay, but our author has written, but for her, her happiest hour was when she was feeding her sparrows, as we had learned in the first session. In the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum, and started to sing. For several hours, she thumped the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum and sang of the homecoming of warriors. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. Okay. Try to understand the meaning of this paragraph. I would be explaining you in few seconds. Okay, so on one particular day, our author's granny, that is our grandmother, she had stopped praying. So we think she might be thinking that her end is near. It can be anything, we do not know. For that we have to talk to the granny, okay, and we can't do that. So instead of that, what she had done, or what she was doing at that time, was she had gathered women from her neighborhood. It means there might be few ladies living near to her house. She had collected them all, and she was playing the drums. See, the bold words are there, okay? So it says that, or we can understand from those words, that the drum that she was playing, that drum, that was a kind of very old drum, okay? Very old drum, or it might be tabla too. We do not know exactly. But we do know that the upper part of the drum, like what we play, that part was very loose. Okay, that part was very loose. That we can understand from the word called sack. Okay, that is called sack. Okay, so and they were singing. Okay, and what they were singing, you see, it is clearly written that they were singing the homecoming of warriors. What they were singing? Homecoming of warriors. They were singing that. The author might have stopped her, or author might be telling to her that, you know what, you can take the rest, because overstrained, she is very old, so you never know what can happen. So they tried to stop granny, but I don't think granny would be listening to them. Let us move. The next morning she was taken ill. It was a mild fever, and the doctor told us that it would go. But my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life she had omitted to pray. She was not going to waste any more time talking to us. Okay, so this suggests that those hours were the final hours of her life. Okay, those hours were the final hours of her life. The next morning, like during the evening time, she might be singing or playing drums. And the next evening she was taken ill. She was having a mild fever. Okay, but the doctor thought that it's not any serious, the fever would go. Okay, but or on the opposite side, or we can use in the contrary. The grandmother was not thinking that. According to grandmother, she came to know that she is going to die. Okay, she is going to die. She came to know about that. Okay, and as it is clearly printed, and she was not talking too much. Okay, she was not talking because she does not want to waste her final hours talking with anyone or with the author. So she is about to die. Let us see what is there in the coming paragraphs. We protested, but she ignored our protest. We protested here, it says that author might be saying to Granny that you would be alright, it's just a mild fever, okay? So they are trying to consolidate her, but the author's granny, that is our grandmother, she is thinking completely differently. Let us move further. She lay peacefully in bed praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor spread on her face and we knew that she was dead. Finally, our granny died. Okay, so before that, what she was doing, she was chanting the God's name, she was reciting prayer with her rosary beads. But finally she died. So that rosary had fallen down from her hand, okay, from lifeless fingers. So anyone can understand that that person is dead. So in this case, it is our grandmother. I mean to say author's grandmother, okay. We lifted her off the bed and, as is customary, laid her on the ground and covered her with a red shroud. Okay, yeah, no need of any explanation in this kind of statement. Everybody can understand this, it's not a big deal. After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. Yes, we know that. The funeral service, many people, they have to do different kinds of ritual, this, that, so those kind of things, they take time, okay? And her body would be burnt, correct? Her body would be burnt. After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. In the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated, correct? The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. We stopped halfway in the courtyard, all over the veranda and in her room, right up where she lay dead and stiff wrapped in the red shroud. Thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. There was no chirping. It means now she is dead. Still there are thousands of sparrows in the veranda. Okay. So I think birds and animals, they can understand many things. Okay. Now even the birds or the sparrows, they have stopped chirping. They were not making any noise. We felt sorry for the birds and my mother fetched some bread for them. Now, yes, we know that grandmother was lying in the bed. Her health was not so good. So even our author's mother had came in. Okay. So here our author's mother is also described by our author. So as our grandmother was giving breads to the sparrow, now she is no more. So instead of granny, author's mother is giving bread to birds. Okay. She broke it into little crumbs the way my grandmother used to and threw it to them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. When we carried my grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. Next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. Now, the difference between granny and mother of author is what? When author's mother had given the breadcrumbs to the birds, they did not eat, while in case of grandmother those birds were eating breadcrumbs, as we had studied that. And finally, when those people had taken grandmother's body for the burning process, at that time Arthur's mother had given the breadcrumbs, but the birds didn't eat. Okay, so as soon as the author's granny was taken off, at that time even the birds, they had flown away. Okay, they flew away. Okay, and finally during the next morning, nobody amongst the sparrows or birds had eaten the breadcrumbs. So finally it was thrown into dustbin by the cleaner, as it is clearly printed in the last statement. So I think this is the end of our first chapter. Now you have to write question and answers in your original copy of English as a first language, and I would be checking your questions and answers. And make sure when you write question and answers, you have to write the introduction first before writing any answer. Introduction means it is taken from which chapter, written by whom. You have to write that, and you have to mention the theme of the chapter before answering the question. It means first paragraph introduction, and in the second paragraph of your answer you have to write the answer of the question that is being asked to you. Okay, so that is the end of our first chapter, and we would be continuing with our second chapter in upcoming videos. So stay tuned and stay safe.